The conquest was possible because the Inca were engaged in civil war. In Mexico, the Spanish progress was rapid because the Aztec mythology had a myth of departed ancestors returning to rule the people, and the Spanish were taken as the returned ruler. Naturally, the Spaniards saw this as the sign of divine favor. And many of the native peoples thought the same. Aztec and Inca conquerors, these were empires, as I said, had brought the symbols of their deities into their main temples. It was a sign that these divinities had been defeated by the conqueror's divinities. The Spaniards didn't set up the images of the conquered divinities in a church. They systematically smashed all signs of the existing cult. And in every place where there had been such a symbol, they set up a statue of Christ or of the Virgin at every pagan holy place. The destructive part of the setting up of Christendom was fairly faithfully and fairly rapidly carried out by the Spanish. The more demanding work of bringing the native peoples into Christian faith was treated with much less enthusiasm. Most of the people who came to settle in this new world came from the marginal social and economic position at home. These are people who are seeking to better themselves. What struck everyone most was the huge mineral wealth of the Americans. Even when it was exhausted, the rumors that this wealth was still there continued. And so everything else was subordinated to acquiring this mineral wealth. First, the people are required to work the mines, and then, when the mines are exhausted, to work the fields. Huge grants of land were made to Spanish settlers, and the grant would include a certain number of chiefdoms and their populations who would be required to work for the person to whom the grant of land was made. These encomiendas, as they were called, replicated the estates in Spain. You're building a new Spain in America, carving out estates such as Spanish grandees ruled over, giving to these people who are not grandees at home, but who want to live like grandees in the new land. And the indigenous people are required do what the peasants do on the Spanish estates and work for the master. With the difference, of course, that there is a racial distinction, an ethnic distinction between master and peasant now that didn't exist in Spain. These clergy, priests, were also brought into the system. Las Casas himself had come to Hispaniola as a secular priest, and he'd been given an encomienda, a grant of land, with people to work it. And he was employed as an enforcer. You notice that the sermon that Las Casas quotes comes not from a parish priest, but from a Dominican friar. People who were outside the system. And you also notice that that Dominican friar and his colleagues are not living in the grand estate, but in a straw-thatched house and eating a very meagre dinner of cabbage soup. The friars are outside the system which is setting up the new Christendom. Exploitation, overwork, starvation, demoralization, and perhaps most of all diseases introduced by the Spaniards drastically reduced the population. By the mid-17th century, the native population of Spanish America is calculated to have been only a tenth of what it had been in 1500. A huge depopulation. The sermon concentrates, well, the sermon is an early Christian protest. Las Casas himself is the best known of the protesters, the Christian protesters against the last crusade. He underwent a sort of conversion experience, as a result of which he gave up his encomienda, his estate, and joined the Dominican order and devoted the rest of his life to the defense of the Indians. Notice the lines of the sermon. What right have you to treat native peoples like this? Are they not human? If they're human, then the law of Christ demands that we love our neighbour as ourselves. Is that what you're doing to these people? Now, these were issues. What is the right to treat them like this? Are they not human? These are issues that were seriously debated in Europe. And you could see the debates going on in Christendom about what is the status of these people. Are they really human? Are they fully human? Do they have rational souls? The great humanist Sepulveda, for instance, argues against Las Casas, and this is quite a common line of argument now from Aristotle. Aristotle argues that there are slaves by nature. That society needs slaves, and there are the servile who, in fact, are fitted for nothing else. So you might argue, and Sepulveda does argue, that the native population of America fits Aristotle's definition of a servile people. The colonists therefore have a right to enslave them because of their natural inferiority. They also had a right to the lands because the Pope had given them to the Spanish. And we don't argue against a papal donation. And they had a right to use force against them because of the idolatry and vile customs of the native peoples. A right to enslave them because of they were a naturally inferior order of humanity. In fact, this was undermined by a papal bull in 1537 that declared that the Indians were fully human and had a right to lands and property. But, as we've said, the Pope can say what he likes out in Rome. Implementation on the ground is going to be overseen by the Spanish crown. The Pope declared the slave trade illegal at one stage. But, and that's after this time, that's in the 1620s. But it had absolutely no effect, because only by the Spanish crown could papal orders be